In today's episode, a wildlife research scientist falls and becomes trapped in a crocodile's enclosure right in the middle of feeding it. While trying to escape the enclosure, it quickly turns into one of the most disturbing crocodile attacks of all time. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the horrifying last minutes of Deasy Tuwo. Welcome to Final Affliction. The crocodiles of Indonesia are a different kind of breed from the typical ones sun-basking in zoos. They are known for their unparalleled cunningness, a trait that has made them formidable predators and survivors for millions of years. On an annual basis, these ancient reptiles are responsible for the deaths of more than 200 souls in Indonesia alone. They are masterful survivors who use their cunningness to outwit their prey and competitors. They attack ferociously, leaving a trail of carnage in their wake. 44-year-old Deasy Tuwo was a wildlife research scientist working in the CV Yoshiki laboratory in Indonesia. The Pearl Farm, where the laboratory was located, had illegally kept a group of crocodiles, which usually basked by the swamps. Among the crocodiles was one named Mary. Mary was 17 feet in length and weighed a staggering 1,300 pounds, thanks to his protein-filled diet of tuna, chicken, and beef. Being an animal lover, Deasy found it refreshing to feed Mary, who never fed on frozen foods or carcasses that were more than a day old. Everything had to be fresh. On the 10th of January 2019, Deasy clocked in and was the first employee to arrive at the lab. It was a warm Friday morning, and the rising sun's rays reflected on the green pools in the Pearl Farm. Deasy took fresh chunks of meat and headed to her favorite crocodile, Mary, for the routine feeding. The crocodile saw her approaching and with a swift flick of its powerful tail, propelled itself out of the water. Its body tensed with anticipation, with its beady eyes locked onto the bucket of meat. Deasy approached the enclosure with slow and cautious movements, wholly aware of the danger lurking beyond the concrete wall. She stood by the enclosure and raised one lump above the 8-foot-tall wall. The crocodile stood on its hind legs and grabbed the meat mid-air faster than the eye could follow, before swallowing it whole. Its sleek, scaly form glistened in the morning sun as it gracefully landed back on the floor. Deasy could see the rippling muscles beneath its skin working in choreographed harmony to execute the impressive leap. Her jaw dropped in awe as she watched Mary's acrobatic display. She continued to feed the reptile, marveling at its sheer power and grace. It was as if it was dancing with her, a graceful but deadly partner in their gory routine. She felt a sense of respect and admiration for Mary. Here she was, witnessing an ancient reptile showcasing the raw power and beauty of nature, a true force to reckon with. As she raised the last piece of meat over the wall, the crocodile choreographically stood on its rear and leaped a little higher than the previous times, clamping its jaws around both the meat and Deasy's left hand. Deasy had been so engrossed in admiring the creature that she forgot to keep her hand high enough, far from the crocodile's reach. She shrieked in pain as Mary's finger-long teeth punctured her skin and sliced her flesh. It then came thudding down, pulling Deasy over the wall and into the enclosure. Deasy heard her bones crushing on the impact of the fall. Mary then did the crocodile's typical death roll with Deasy's left arm still in his mouth. Deasy's body convulsed as the crocodile continued to tear her, shaking her like a chew toy. Her screams echoed through the air, a desperate plea for help that went unanswered. Blood spattered across the ground, and her screams began to grow fainter as her strength began to wane. Mary's powerful muscles worked in unison. He shook his head from side to side, rolled and twisted, ripping the flesh and bone from Deasy's body. The sounds of bones crunching and flesh tearing filled the air as Deasy screamed in agony. On the floor, She rolled over and glanced towards Mary, and their eyes met. She was staring right at her with cold, unblinking eyes. Her arm was long gone, down the guts of the creature. Crocodiles are unable to chew their food and therefore swallow it whole. They have the most acidic digestive system of any animal, capable of digesting bones, horns, and hooves. They are also known to swallow small stones known as gastroliths, which help grind their prey. Deasy's heart pounded in her chest as she desperately searched for a way out of the death ring. She was now bleeding profusely and in agonizing pain. As she scrambled to her feet, she could feel the hot breath of the crocodile on her heels and the sound of its massive body slithering across the concrete floor echoing in her ears. She scanned the walls, hoping to find a crack or handhold to grip onto, but they were perfectly smooth and offered no escape. The crocodile was gaining on her, its jaws snapping just inches from her feet. With a surge of adrenaline, she launched herself towards the walls and began scaling like a human spider with her remaining arm. Her fingers searched frantically for a grip, but the smooth surface offered none. She then lost her footing and slipped, falling straight into the murky water. She had now jumped from the frying pan to the fire, as the waters were Mary's ideal hunting grounds. She had nowhere to run and was now at the mercy of Mary. Mary slipped into the water and began swimming towards her. Deasy frantically pumped her arm and legs to propel her towards the other side, but with a missing arm, she was too slow to outrun the vicious reptile. Within seconds, the crocodile had caught up with her and lunged itself with its jaws open, then clamped onto Deasy's torso. Deasy let out a screeching scream while yelling for help, but the crocodile was efficient and merciless. It tore her torso open, and her intestines and other internal organs were exposed, staining the water red. Deasy flailed her arm, beating the surface of the water as she struggled to stay afloat. However, her remaining arm ended up in the tight grip of the crocodile's teeth. It then dragged her into the depths, where her lungs burned with the need for air. If a crocodile is unable to snap the neck of its prey, it drags it underwater and holds it to drown. And this was the case with Deasy. She could feel her life fading away. The water churned with blood as the beast continued to pull her under. Deasy knew that her fate had been sealed and closed her eyes, bracing for death. Deasy was always the first to report to work, and if not around, she would inform her colleagues of her absence. So as time went by, the other workers became a little concerned about the whereabouts of their laboratory leader, who was known to be punctual. They hoped that a minor, unavoidable circumstance had held her, and that she would report later in the day. However, in the mid-morning hours, around 9 a.m., terror spread on the farm when someone spotted a strange shape in Mary's enclosure. A body was lazily drifting on the surface of the water, facing down. The strange shape then started gliding on the surface of the water towards the dry concrete floor. It was then that the horrified staff saw the crocodile emerge with Deasy's savaged body between its jaws. Her left hand was nothing but a mangled stump, and her torso badly mutilated. The staff's minds struggled to comprehend the sheer brutality of the attack. They were afraid of venturing into the predator's enclosure and immediately notified authorities at the Tamboriri police station. A rescue team consisting of the police and officers from North Sulawesi Natural Resources Conservation Agency immediately jumped into action to retrieve Deasy's body. However, the relentless crocodile wasn't ready to let go of its prized catch. As they approached Mary, he thrashed his powerful tail back and forth in a wild display of strength and fury. His hiss cut through the air like a jagged blade, leaving the rescuers in fear. His eyes blazed with a fierce intensity, and his hiss was a clear message that he was ready to protect his kill. The handlers retreated and grabbed their sedation gun. They had seen enough of Mary's aggression. The sedated crocodile was then strapped on a flatbed truck and ferried away to a wildlife rescue facility. where medical tests were conducted that confirmed it had indeed consumed Deasy. Staff at the CV Yoshiki laboratory described Deasy as a quiet lady who loved animals. They were deeply devastated by the death of the head of the lab. However, they noted with concern how Mary had shown prior signs of aggression, having previously attacked and killed another crocodile that had ventured into his pool. The Sulawesi Natural Resources Conservation Agency officials blamed the Japanese owner of the facility, who was illegally keeping these crocodiles as pets. He was charged and later received a 10-year prison sentence for being the primary cause of Deasy Tuwo's horrifying final affliction.